Okay, well, let's talk about our expression for the day. So, our expression for the day is once in a blue moon. Now, I don't know if you've heard this expression before, but first, the meaning of the expression is something that happens very rarely. And remember, rare means like almost never. It almost never happens. But again, it does happen, just not very often. Now, first off, where does the word blue moon come from? Well, some people kind of think about maybe the color of the moon, but actually it refers to the rare situation when we have two full moons in a month. You know, usually a full moon takes 29 days. So
Telemarker.
it's pretty unusual when we have two full moons. So in this case, I chose this expression because, again, what's happening to us right now is a pretty rare situation. So if you notice my sentence here says, the COVID-19 is not some once in a blue moon situation. It's a once in a century situation. So in this case, we can think of once in a blue moon as something that happens rarely. Let's be honest, the COVID-19 situation almost happens, what, once every 100 years, maybe 150, 200 years. So in this case, I thought this would be an interesting expression for us to think about. Okay, guys, so here is our chat question of the day. I know in this situation, sometimes we think about life, you know, before the COVID-19. So I was thinking, what is something that you rarely or never did before, but now that you can't do it because of the COVID situation, you really want to do it? Now, my example is I used to play basketball many, 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 many years ago. And usually I don't really think about it. You know, I quit playing many, many years ago. But now that I can't do it, I really want to do it. I kind of miss it. Uh, I think part of it is just wanting to be outside and to do something active. So guys, how would you answer this question? So again, I'll stop sharing for a moment. We can think about the chat box. So once again, our expression for the day is once in a blue moon. And again, once in a blue moon just usually means something that we don't do very often. So again, for example, riding a bike, I do that maybe once in a blue moon. But now the COVID situation is even more strange. It's even more unusual. So in this case, probably COVID is more of a once in a century situation. So, okay. All right. Well, guys, this morning we're going to start our new topic. So first off, I'm going to show you a word on the screen. And what I would like for you guys to do is you can use the chat box or you can use your microphone. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some of your answers up here on the screen. So guys, what I want you to tell me is, what do you think of? What is the first thing you think of when you see this word? Okay, are you ready? So here we go. So the word health. So tell me, guys, what are some things that you think of when you hear that word health? Just tell me. You can use the chat box, you can use the microphone. Tell me the first thing you think of when you think of health.
I'm well.
Okay. Okay. So well. Okay, that's a good one. Okay, so I'm going to put that on the screen.
It's like a crown on the head of a healthy person.
So, so explain.
Yeah, it's like a crown, on the head of the healthy person. The sick person can see it.
Oh, I see. So it's like a.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I mean that it's very important, and we can't feel that we are healthy until we are getting sick.
Okay, I see what you mean. So when we think about health, we think about things we can see, visible signs. Okay, visible signs of health. Okay.
Oh.
Okay. Mia mentioned diet. Okay. Now, okay. And right now I was thinking about right now. So maybe in danger. That's an interesting thought. Yeah, because right now Corona is a situation that we have to think about, which is one of the reasons why I chose this topic. Okay.
Walking in the park, fresh air, fresh water.
I like that one. Fresh air, fresh water. Okay.
Sports and fitness.
Okay.
Fitness,
Do exercise.
You like that one? Okay,
yes.
fitness. So Ozum said fitness too. Okay. Anything else we can think of? Anything else? Asami, any thoughts about anything come to mind?
Medication, maybe.
Hold on, Asami, say it again. I'm sorry.
Important.
Important. Okay, that's true. Okay, and then Anna, you said something.
Medication.
Medication, medicine. Okay.
Medicine.
Yeah. In fact, let's talk for just a moment. These are some great words you guys came up with here. Let me talk about two of them real quickly. So let me first start with the word diet. Okay, so I think many of us think about diet as like when you're on a diet, means you're trying to, usually it means trying to lose weight, right? So if you're on a diet, some of you can probably think of there, many different kinds of diets that we've had over the years. So in this case, hold on, my mouse got disconnected. All right, hold on just a second. My mouse got disconnected here. Okay, sorry guys, hold on just a second. My mouse got disconnected from my computer, so it's trying to connect again. Okay, there we go. Sorry guys. Yeah, so let's talk about diet. So basically diet, we think about going on a diet, means like trying to lose weight. We also think about the word diet, just the word diet in general. So one of the confusing things about the word diet is that we use it in two different ways. We think about being on a diet, like losing weight, or if we just use the word diet in general, it just means the food we eat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not many calories.
Yeah, well, especially if we want to lose weight. But for example, if I asked all of you to describe, like, for example, if I said the diet of Japanese people, or the diet of people from Turkey.
Fish food.
Yeah, so Sergey, for example, yeah, what kind of food do we normally eat? So for example, guys, how would you describe the diet in your country? Like, what are the types of foods that people normally eat? So again, we think about in Japan, for example, we mentioned that, but what are some typical foods that people eat in your countries? How would you describe the Japanese diet, or the Russian diet, or the diet from your country? How would you describe it? What kind of foods?
Oh, maybe some porridge.
Pork?
Porridge.
Porridge.
Okay. Yes. Any grains.
Grains. Okay.
Yes.
Maybe vegetables.
Some vegetables.
Vegetables. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Those are some good answers.
Non-fat milk and yogurt, maybe.
I don't know.
Fresh fish.
Fresh fish.
Yes,
that's a good one. Okay. Yeah, you guys are all talking about the good stuff, right? Seafood. Okay.
Only water.
Only water.
Okay, now guys, what do you think about the American diet?
Pizza.
Pizza.
Hamburger. Hamburger and Coca-Cola.
Yes. Fast food. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Fast food. Stuff that's not very good for us, right? Yeah, unfortunately. Okay, so once again, diet, again, we use diet in two different ways. We think about the diet in general, the types of food we eat from our country, or the types of food we eat in general, or the expression on a diet. Again, that can be confusing, because when we're on a diet, that means we're trying to lose weight. So that's a very strange kind of difference between those two uses. Now, Okaina mentioned medication and medicine. Let's talk about those two words. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get this to work here. So let's talk about those two words for just a moment. Now, first off, medication, we think of medication as more like things that we have to take long term. So for example, if somebody has like a medical condition, we generally think of medication as something they must take for the long term. So again, sometimes I know in different languages, maybe we think of medicine and medication as, you know, maybe the same thing. But in English, we think of medication as something that you might need for serious conditions, for long-term conditions. Medicine, on the other hand, is usually, you know, again, stuff we take perhaps for a temporary reason. So, you know, when you go to the doctor, sometimes, you know, when you have to fill out medical information, they'll say, are you taking any medication? So notice what they say. They say, are you taking medication? Because they want to know, are you taking some sort of long-term type of medication? So that's why they don't ask you, are you taking medicine? They ask you, are you taking medication?
Medication.
Yeah. So for example, if we have a headache, just a normal headache, would you take medication or medicine for that?
Medicine.
Yeah, usually medicine.
Medicine.
Yeah, medication is something we would use for something more long. Yeah, so maybe something more chronic. So those are two very important words to think about too. Okay, well, guys, so excuse me. As you can see, our topic is, for the next couple of weeks, is thinking about health and thinking about some of the different words that we use around health. So you guys had some great examples here, thinking about exercise, thinking about the types of things we have to do to keep ourselves well, eating good food, you know, thinking about diet, thinking about the type of food we eat. Fresh air, I think that's important too. Fresh air is very important. And then I think Okayana does remind us that, yeah, these are some difficult times. So yes, maybe our health is in danger too. So these are all good answers. Okay, well, guys, I'm going to clear the screen and we're going to go ahead and move on to our next screen. And in this next screen, we're going to go ahead and introduce our officially our topic, which is Burlington English. We're going to do Unit 5 in our low intermediate level. And again, in just a moment, I'm going to go to the Burlington English website and kind of introduce a couple of our topics for this week. So for this week, we're going to discuss these things. We're going to think about the elements of healthy eating. So guys, I think a lot of you gave some good examples of the types of food we need to think about. We're going to learn about some signal words. So for example, words like, for example, like, such as. You're also going to think about how to calculate percentages. Now, percentage is that little symbol you see here. This is a percent sign. So for example, when we say we love English class 100%, that's a good answer, by the way, 100%. But the idea is we calculate percentages. It's kind of hard sometimes to understand percentages. And then finally, some of you might remember this. We talked about some of these words a while ago. Words such as any, some, few, and several, which we're going to look at a little bit here today. Okay? All right, so guys, I'm going to go for just a moment. I'm going to leave this presentation, and we're going to jump to Burlington English's page. So I'm going to bring that up now, so hopefully you'll be able to see that there. Okay. All right, so let me go ahead and bring in the first topic for us, okay? And I'm going to just, again, kind of walk through a couple of things for us, and then I'm going to get some opportunity for you guys to give me some answers to some of these questions. But here on the screen, you should be able to see, again, a picture and introducing our topic, which is, again, thinking about expressions, identifying percentages, and so on. Okay. All right, now everybody, here's our first activity that we're going to do together. Now, first off, let's look at the picture here. I'm going to kind of zoom in for just a moment and take a look at the different foods we see here on the screen, right? So, of course, these are the delicious foods, right? These are the best foods. So we have ice cream, potato chips, right? Okay, and then down here we've got fish, vegetables, okay, including my least favorite vegetable, broccoli. There's fruit salad, so maybe you guys like fruit salad. And then we have hot dogs. Of course, hot dogs are delicious too. All right, so we've got all these particular foods that we see here on the screen. Okay, now guys, here is our first little activity. So real quickly, let's think about which foods are healthy and which ones are unhealthy. Okay, let's start with the healthy foods. All right, so guys, who would like to tell us what are some healthy foods we see on the screen?
Fish, vegetables.
Vegetables.
Fish.
Yeah. Fruit.
Vegetable.
Fruit, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and the unhealthy foods are?
Potato chips.
Potato
potatoes,
chips,
ice,
burgers,
ice cream,
ice
hot
cream,
dog,
hot
yeah,
dog.
hot dog.
Okay, so wait a minute. Those are the most delicious foods, though, right?
Yeah.
Oh
Ice cream.
man.
yeah,
Okay.
it's boring.
Fruit
Well,
salad ice cream.
yeah. Now, of course, fruit salad. It depends, right? How much? Hopefully, don't put any sugar in it. Okay. Now, look at question number 2. What are some other healthy foods we can think of? So, Anna Maria, what do you think? What are some healthy foods you can think of?
Unhealthy food, no? Well, everything, teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, not everything, but when you know how, maybe, take exercise, maybe everything is unhealthy.
That's true.
Because,
That's true. We
because
can always eat too much. Yeah.
exactly. And when you eating too much of everything, is a lot unhealthy because you have, or maybe you are weight for this reason,
Okay.
because you eating too much a lot about everything.
So certainly we have to think about how much we eat too, right? Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. But what about question number 2 there? So what do you think? What are some other healthy foods? We've got some examples here. Can somebody give us that?
Green.
So grains can be healthy.
Grains.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So grains can be healthy. Any other healthy foods?
Cheese.
Vegetable.
Some dairy products. Yes, some can be healthy. Okay.
Chicken.
Well, the vegan food.
Someone mentioned someone mentioned chicken. Yeah. Okay.
Turkey.
Turkey can be, sure. I think Sergey mentioned earlier yogurt, so other types of dairy product.
Maybe.
Yeah. Now I used to love yogurt, but I think it was kind of upsetting my stomach, so I had to stop eating it. But again, there are lots of different answers I'm sure you guys could give. Okay. So as you can see, one of the topics we're going to be talking about this week is thinking about healthy eating. So for example, let's try one more little activity. And one more activity here is thinking about nutrition. Nutrition is, of course, thinking about healthy eating foods that are good for us. Of course, we have good nutrition, right? We've got, bad nutrition. So again, that's something to think about when we talk about collocations. So let's make a note of that on the screen when we think about collocations.
Collocations.
Yeah, so again, we can have good and bad nutrition. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I know that I would like to have good nutrition. The problem is sometimes I don't always eat the good foods, right? So, yeah. And think about children, right? Children need good nutrition. So one problem right now is if they're not in school, are they getting good food? Are they getting good nutrition? So who knows? All right, well, let's look at my list here on the screen. So I'm going to move on to the screen here. So it says, we make dairy products like yogurt and butter from milk. So dairy is going to be one of those categories. So some of you mentioned cheese, right, for example, or yogurt, okay? Another example of nutrition is thinking about protein. Now, of course, meat and eggs can give us protein. What else can give us protein? Where else can we get protein? Beef, right?
Eggs.
Fish, yeah.
Chicken.
Any other places?
I see a screen in the display.
Yeah. We can get protein from nuts, from beans.
Yeah. For
lentils.
Yeah. Lentils, yeah.
Yeah, some of your country's diets have maybe beans as part of their diet.
Yeah, beans, yeah.
Okay.
And this is the name.
Which one?
And. No?
Say it again.
And. Jamón. In the central. What is in the central?
You mean in the picture?
Yeah.
Well, let's see. We see ham.
This hand.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay, I got you. Okay. All right, so let's continue. So we have grain. So someone mentioned grains.
Grains, yeah.
So we have wheat. Wheat is a grain we use to make bread. Some of you have some very, like for example, around the world, what's the most popular grain around the world?
Right. No. Right.
Yeah.
Wheat.
Rice.
Wheat. Rice. Wheat.
Yeah,
Wait.
I'm curious. How many of you in your countries?
Corn, soybean, buckwheat.
Oh, now Sergey knows all these grains, right? Sergey, you like to eat healthy, right?
barley.
Well, I'm curious. How many of your countries use rice as part of your diet?
Oh my God, my mom every day cooking rice.
Okay, so big in your country, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I know rice is pretty big in the Dominican Republic, right?
Of course.
Of course, yeah.
In
Yeah.
America, corn or soybean.
Yeah, unfortunately, corn is almost too much in the United States. We actually, corn is good in smaller, and smaller, servings, certainly. Japan, rice, pretty big. Korea, these are pretty big things too, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So again, I think we all can say that rice is a pretty popular grain. Which do you think is better, white rice or brown rice?
Brown rice.
Brown.
Yeah.
It depends.
It's more healthy. It's more healthy.
You think so?
White rice.
White rice.
What is the difference?
Well, first off, I think about color, obviously, but what is the difference between brown and white rice? Who can tell us?
I think brown is more healthy than white rice.
I think part of it might be not as starchy, so it may be a little bit better. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good question because never in my life I listening about the difference
between them. I don't, honestly, to me, I kind of prefer brown rice. I think I prefer the taste, but I don't know necessarily, if one is like much better than the other. So again, I think part of it might be also that one, it might be easier to grow. So I have no idea. Okay, well, let's look at the last word here at the bottom. So if you notice, the highlighted word here is the word amount. So it says food that has a large amount of sugar in it, like candy, is unhealthy. And of course, we know candy is delicious, but it is not good for us. Now, the word amount, let's talk about that word for just a moment. So the word amount, I'll put it here on the screen. I don't know if you can see it. Sometimes students have a question about what's the difference between the words amount and number. Because those words, often we see them used the same way. So see if I can highlight that. So generally, we use the word amount for things that we do not count. So for example, when they say an amount of sugar, well, remember, sugar is something we cannot count. Do you remember when we talked about countable and uncountable? So again, that's often confusing when you see people often use number and amount the same way. Actually, amount is something we use for things that are not countable. So for example, we would say an amount of money, an amount of food, for example. Now, when we have a number, we generally think of something we count, right? So a number of people, we can count people, right? So in this case, we often use the word amount for things that we don't count. So think about it in that way, that amount is uncountable or non-countable. Okay? So.
I think, Mr. John, about brown rice, it has a lot of fibers than white one.
I think it probably is more fibrous. Yeah, I think there is some particular health benefit there. Yeah. So my guess again is maybe that's a real benefit.
Thank you, Saba.
Yeah, thank you. So Saba gave us the answer for the day. All right.
Yeah, but brown one, it's not the white, white.
And less calorie too.
That's true. So. Okay, well, I'm going to clear the screen now. So let's look at this activity real quickly. You guys can help me with it. So let me get my mouse ready. Okay, so guys, if you'll notice here on the screen, we've got 4 different words. We have rice, which we just talked about, cottage cheese, fish, and cookies. So for example, guys, you're going to help me out. Let's start with number 1. So if you'll notice, we have a blank here, and then I'm going to read the rest of the sentence. You all tell me which word should I move into the sentence. So for example, number 1, blank is another dairy product. Bless you.
Oh, bless you.
So which one should I choose? Rice, cottage cheese, fish, or cookies?
Cheese.
Cottage cheese.
Cottage
Cottage cheese.
cheese.
All right,
Cottage cheese.
All right, so I'm going to move it there in the block, okay? All right, number 2, blank is another food that gives us protein.
A fish.
Fish.
Yes, you guys
Fish.
mentioned fish. Okay, good. All right, number 3 is also a grain. We were just talking
A
about
Rice.
all right, everybody
Rice.
knows that one. Okay. And then finally, blank also have a lot of sugar in them.
Cookies.
Cookies.
Oh, but they're so delicious, right? So, okay, let's check our answers.
Any pastry.
Any pastry, yeah. There's no healthy pastries, right? Okay. All right, well, guys, so as you can see, the introduction here to our first topic is thinking about foods and categories of food. So, again, I think we know a lot of these answers already, but I wanted to take a few minutes and introduce some of the things you're going to be looking at in this particular lesson. Now, the final thing from this particular screen that I wanted to talk about, okay, is right here. Now, we are not going to do this activity right now, but I just wanted to show you that one of the activities you're going to do is going to involve some of these words here. So I'm going to highlight here on the screen in thinking about words or phrases that we can use to give examples. So some of you might know that we call these kinds of words signal words. Okay, so maybe you can say that, signal words, right? So signal words basically introduce different kinds of ideas. And there are many different kinds of signal words that we use in language. If I said, if you remember in our last lesson, in our last chapter, we practiced with words of time. So for example, when I use words, do you remember these words? After, before?
Before.
Do you remember some of those words?
When, when, yes.
Yeah. So for example, we might consider these time signals. They tell us when things happen, that they happen before or after. So if you look here on the screen, I've highlighted that words like for example, such as, for instance, and like, these particular words often are used to give examples, to introduce an idea that we can later discuss, okay? So you will be doing a little activity using some of these words. Now this particular activity, we don't have time to do all of it, but maybe we'll listen to maybe the first part of it. And the idea is, as we listen, and I think everyone should be able to hear it, we're gonna see which particular phrase did this person use? Did the person use for example, such as, for instance, like? So as we listen to this first box right here, see if you can catch which particular phrase the speaker is using. Okay, so guys, let's try this and see if it works, okay? This is my first time trying the audio, so see if you can hear it.
One group is fruits, another is vegetables, another group is grains. There are many kinds of foods in this group. For instance, rice, bread, and pasta.
Okay, did you all hear that?
For instance.
Okay, so good, we heard it. Okay, good. So if you notice, he said for instance, and that, again, so for instance is almost,
For instance.
yeah, it's basically the same expression as for example. So often when people use those expressions, that means they're giving examples of something. So if you notice, he was giving examples of grains, rice, bread, pasta. So that's why he said, for instance. So again, one of the activities you're going to do this week is going to practice with some of those phrases, for example, such as. Now, students often ask, I hear Americans use the word like all the time. That's a very, very popular phrase. And I do want to mention to everybody that often Americans confuse, believe it or not, we do get stuff confused. Americans often confuse words of like and such as. These two words actually are a little bit different, but you will notice that most Americans use them the same way. So if I said, my favorite foods are, I don't know, my favorite foods are fruit, like apples and bananas and so on. So often people use them as a way to give examples. However, grammatically speaking, that is usually not correct. We usually use the word like for comparison. So if I say this situation is like this situation, Often the word like is used to compare things. So unfortunately, many Americans get this expression confused. We use it more for comparison. Such as is much more used for examples. So I just wanted to mention that to you because Americans often get confused with these two phrases. So in this case, what I'm going to tell you is the correct answer, if you're giving an example, should be such as. So if I say my favorite foods, so he mentions here many different kinds of foods in this group, such as rice, bread, and pasta. Generally, we should not say there are many kinds of foods in this group like rice, bread, and pasta. So again, like is more for comparison. This is like this, you know. But Americans confuse this all the time. English speakers, we often use these words the same way. So just remember, most people don't think about these two different expressions. So just think about in this case, okay, I know the correct grammar in this case, but Americans confuse these words all the time. Okay, well, so once again, you're going to practice with these words. For example, such as, for instance, like, and some other phrases. All right. Okay, guys, we got one more quick thing I want to show us before we get to the end of our lesson today. So, and that is thinking about grammar. So one of the grammar ideas we're talking about this lesson involves quantifiers. Okay. So if you look at the picture here on the screen, so you see two people talking to each other. Take a moment, look at what they say to each other.
Do you have any soda? But I only have a few glasses. Can you bring some, please?
Okay. Yeah, so do you see some of those words like any, a few, some? So
yes.
yeah, you might remember we talked about some of these words in the past when we talked about things we count, things we don't count. So we're going to kind of go back and review this idea a little bit this session. So the idea is we use these types of quantifiers to talk about how much or how many of something. So I think what happens, and again, I think everybody here in the group probably knows what I'm talking about, is it's often difficult to translate something we want to say in our language into English. For example, the word any. Unfortunately, we often get confused how to translate that word because we might use a different word, or we might have a different idea that we say in our language. So what I wanted to do before we get close here is to think about when do we use these words? What are the situations? So let's take a look at this first activity, okay? Everybody, I'm going to put this up on the screen.
Excuse me.
Yes,
article small, little.
Say it again.
Articles small, little, answer. Yes.
Which word are we talking about, Osum?
After articles, not now here.
Articles, you mean like the and a and an? Do you mean this word? This word here, Osum, on the screen, articles?
Yes, articles.
Okay, so you mean
because,
like go ahead.
Because not now computer, cell phone is articles small.
You mean the text? I see.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm gonna we'll zoom in here on the next one. Okay.
So, okay. Thank you.
And remember, Osum, if you're using on the screen, I don't know if you can pinch and zoom, so I'll zoom in a little bit more and see if that helps. Okay. So I'm gonna zoom in here. Okay. Can you see that a little better?
Yeah. Good. Okay.
Yeah,
thank you.
It's a little hard to make a little bit bigger. Okay. Okay, good. Okay. Well, just take a look at this. Just take a look at this paragraph. I'm going to read it real quickly. Okay. So it says, Connor invited several friends for dinner. He doesn't have much time to get ready. He's cooking a few simple dishes. He doesn't have any soda at home, so his friends are bringing some. Okay. So in this first activity here that we're going to do, so over on the right side, we're going to think about what quantifiers were used in the lesson, in the reading that we see on the left. So for example, for number one, who did Connor invite for dinner? Well, if I look here in the text, who did he invite?
Inviters and friends.
Yeah.
Friends. Sorry.
Yes. In
Several
fact,
friends.
not just friends, but several friends. Yeah. So, so again, we think of several, for example, as a word that describes a plural idea. Several meaning many. Okay. All right, guys. Number 2. What is he cooking?
Cooking a few
simple dishes.
So yeah. So not a lot, but a few. How
Cacophony.
many? How many is a few? How many do you think is a few?
Some.
2 or 3.
It's not a lot.
A liter.
It's
Not a
few.
lot. Yeah.
How many friends?
Well, he said several, so I'm curious. Hopefully, they're not going to be too hungry, because if he's just a few dishes, maybe they're not going to eat much. I don't know. But generally, we think of a few as around 3. So 3 would be generally the number we might say. So when people say a few, they usually mean about 3, but it could be more, maybe 4 or 5, but generally 3. Okay, and then finally, what are his friends bringing?
They're bringing some soda.
Soda, that's right. By the way, soda, if you notice, here in the United States, we have many different words for like Coca-Cola or soft drinks, right?
Yes.
So some people say soda.
With dioxide carbon?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Some people say pop. I don't know if you heard that before. Some people put it together and say soda pop.
Soda pop.
And some people say soft drinks.
Yes.
So have you heard some of these before?
Yeah, soft drinks.
For example, I may have mentioned this before, but like my dad, he calls it pop. So when he wants something to drink like Coca-Cola, he says, let's get some pop. Now I notice up here in Northern Kentucky, they don't say pop. So when I say pop to somebody, they look at me like I'm crazy. So keep in mind that here in Kentucky, we've got many different words for the same thing. So, okay. Well, guys, so as you can see, in thinking about our lesson, I just want to mention real quickly, so on the next screen, so our discussion here is thinking about how do we use these quantifiers. Now, everybody, please remember, I'm recording this lesson. So if you want to go back, you can always go back and review. But I want you to notice a couple of things. Yeah, so for example, quantifiers tell us how much or how many. So you might remember we've talked a little bit about countable words and non-countable words, right?
With count nouns.
Yes. So for example, guys, look on the left side. If I want to use quantifiers with countable words, remember some of the words are going to be a little different. Some are going to be the same. If you notice, for words like a lot of, do you remember this word?
Yeah.
Yeah, we could use it with either one. We could use it with count words, or we could use it with non-count. Yeah. If I want to use some, if you notice, if you remember, we could use some.
We can use it with the count and then the count.
With both, yeah. But some words we don't. For example, many.
Many and
several. A few.
Much.
Yeah, these are all things we would use with countable words. So words like friends, for example. Over on the left side, if I have soda,
soda. Yeah.
Well, I can have a lot of soda, some soda, or
a little.
Yeah. Okay, and then finally, I just want to point out to everybody that don't forget when we have something that's negative. So in this case, if you notice, when I don't have something, so everybody listen carefully. If I want to use a quantifier in a negative way, so for example, if you say I have 0, I have nothing, I have no soda, or sorry, no friends, for example. Notice we would say any. So guys, just remember, when I have a negative word, we say not any. So in this case, that's the time we use the word any. We use it in negative situations. So he doesn't have any soda. He doesn't have any friends. That's too bad, right? No friends. And then if I want to use it in a plural group, remember with countable words, he doesn't have many. If I use it in a non-countable way, we would say he doesn't have much soda. So I think some of you might remember, we talked about some of these before, but again, this might be a new topic for many of us. And I know that the problem can be if we're trying to translate from one language to the next, that can be difficult. English has these kinds of positive, negative words that we use for both countable and non-countable things. The final thing I want to mention to everybody is if you notice, so I'm going to clear the screen here for just a moment. If you notice, guys, in going back to the first picture here, do you notice how she is using the word any? Everybody see that?
Yeah.
Well, what do you notice here? What do you notice?
Do you have any soda?
What am I circling?
Because it's a question.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. So in a question, everybody, when you ask a question, if you want to know if they have something, anything, we use the word any in the question. So if I say, for example, do you have any money? You know, do you have any time? Do you have any friends?
Yeah.
Pretty boring.
Yeah, pretty boring. Yeah, pretty bad, right?
Yeah.
So in this case, the word any, we also would use in a question. So that's something we're going to practice with more next week, because we're going to do a couple of activities in our class and our chat time, and practicing a lot more with these quantifying words. But this is one of the things you guys are going to be doing in Burlington English this week. So just remember, when we ask questions, we often use the words any or some, but usually any is the word we would use in questions. Okay? All right. Well, guys, we're about ready to finish our lesson for today. So once again, and going back to our presentation, so I'm going to return now. So again, in our lessons this week, you guys are going to discuss, just practice with healthy eating. You'll practice with some of those signal words. You'll have an activity or two using percentages. And then finally, you'll do some activities using some of those quantifiers. And next week, we're going to practice more with the quantifiers in our chat time. Okay, so guys, before we finish here this morning, I do want to mention that we have some winners from the games that we played online. So are we ready to find out the winners? All right, well, here we go. So in third place with 27,903 points, Okana, congratulations. You finished in third place in our online game. Okay, and then in second place with 30,255 points, we have Rena. Congratulations.
Wow.
Oh,
Congratulations.
thank you.
And then finally in first place with 37,430.
Asami, I think.
It is Asami.
Oh my God.
Good.
So congratulations to, first off, congratulations to everybody for playing.
Thank you.
So I'm glad you had a good time. Hopefully you had a good time playing the game. So congrats to everybody. Okay, so for next time, so our lesson for next time is, again, I want you to try the listen and speak activity, healthy eating, and the grammar activity quantifiers. And again, I'll send this information in an email shortly after we're finished today. And everybody, if we can try to finish those activities by next Tuesday. So again, next Tuesday is May 5th.